just reached the point where we finally find out what the big secret about Rachel is. And I'm shocked. I am actually floored by what I have just found out. And I really hate Nicholas's family, is all I will say. Hello everybody, it is 11:28 in the morning on Monday. I have just really started this vlog for this week. So that's a great way to start off the vlog, is by saying I absolutely disdain Nicholas's family. I already did ahead of time, but I truthfully at this point just hate them. They are awful people. And essentially what they found out is about Rachel's family that I guess she didn't even know, and they're using it as a way to say that she's not good enough for him. And it's absolutely disgusting, because I think that it doesn't matter, and it's very clear to Nick he doesn't give a shit about it. This is one of those books where it's like you're gonna be angry like the entire time you're reading this, because all it is a huge drama fest. And there's so many different kinds of things culturally that the rich families of Singapore adhere to. There are certain ways that they handle things. And I don't know necessarily if it's fully accurate for now anymore. The books have been out for quite a while, so things may have changed, but the book itself is supposed to be a satirical kind of look at the wealthy in Singapore and how they handle things. And it's weird enough that I feel like in some ways this relates to how American culture is, not to the fullest extent, but there is a kind of idea, at least about the wealthy in America, where if you have like it's like a publicity thing, where you have two celebrities that get together because they're both influential in some capacity, and they are supposed to be kind of this promotion of, you know, power and wealth. And if they're together, you know, they bring, you know, so many people together because people love them separately, they love them together, those kinds of things. And then when they divorce or they, you know, become separated, people become outraged and they hate individuals that they might be with while they're separated, or when they get divorced, or, you know, some things like that. And a lot of that in American culture, when it comes to our celebrities and our wealthy, it's similar to what happens here, but on a much grander scale. I feel like with the way that the wealthy are described in Singapore is they're much more petty, and they're much more kind of nosy about things. And that could just be because I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of American wealthy culture, because I am not a wealthy person myself, so I don't know much of that. All I see about the wealthy are things on like the covers of magazines, or what you see on like social media and stuff like that. So I truly have no idea if what is happening in this book is in any way relative to exactly what American wealthy culture is, but it seemed like there are some similarities at the very least, which is interesting to me because I didn't think that this was possible in other areas of the world. I thought that maybe America had a very kind of particular way that the wealthy handle themselves, but it seems to me that at least in this book, it's very similar in a lot of ways with how they handle essentially marriages within this family. Like the marriage aspect is a huge point of contention when it comes to wealthy culture, because even the marriage of Nick's friend Colin is kind of arranged in a sense. Like he knew the woman he was going to be marrying, he had grown up with her, he knew about her, but it wasn't necessarily his own full decision to marry her. It was kind of like, in a sense, a publicity kind of thing, but he does have some feeling toward the woman. You know, it wasn't that he was forced into it by any means to the point where he couldn't have backed out. It was kind of just, it was arranged. He felt at least kind of comfortable with marrying her and thought that it might be, you know, worth his time, worth his while. And that's kind of how it is. I really like this book because I think it just touches on a lot of interesting things. And now with this point where I'm at in the book, I am on page 461. I am nearing the end of it. We do finally get the reveal of what exactly the secret about Rachel's life is, which I was saying at the end of my last vlog that I wasn't sure whether or not that was going to come up within the last 100 pages of the book, or if it was going to be something that would be dropped as a bombshell at the very end going into the second book, or if we would have to wait until until book 2 to find out that. So this one, it was a bombshell for sure, but it's not at the very, very end of the book. There's still about 60 pages or so left of the book. So I do still have quite a bit of time to see kind of the fallout from that and what exactly happens and how Nick and Rachel handle that, and then what is to be expected with going into China Rich Girlfriend, which I'm excited to get. I would definitely like to get China Rich Girlfriend and Rich People Problems like really, really soon, because I do kind of already have another book picked out that I was going to read on vacation. If I finished this while I was on vacation, I'm gonna jump over to that one, which was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I should be able to finish this today. I think that it's gonna fly by really quickly, and then at least I will get started with Children of Blood and Bone at some point today. I don't know how much I'm gonna read it, but I am planning on getting at least probably the first 50 pages, maybe 100 pages, depending, of that one done. And I'm reading that one on my Kindle, so I think that one might fly a little bit faster because I tend to read ebooks, I think, a little bit quicker than I do physical books. But I've also been taking my time with Crazy Rich Asians just because it's not like it's boring. I just really wanted to, you know, absorb everything that the story is, because I know it's supposed to be kind of more of a satirical story. But this is one of those satirical stories where, unless you know going into it it's satirical, it just otherwise seems like a drama fest, but it's actually really fun to read. The rest of this week, though, I do plan on, like I said, getting through Children of Blood and Bone. I do plan on writing today a little bit after I get done with work, or some point at night, maybe after, you know, Robert is awake and everything, and after we've watched The Exiles, after while we eat dinner. I have one scene in particular I want to write today, and I have another scene that I think I'm going to work on tomorrow that I was thinking about at the end of my last vlog on Sunday night. I kind of had one idea already in my mind that was going to be kind of a follow-up to a scene I had written before, and then I have another scene with my antagonist that I have a really clear image of that I kind of want to explore, because it does delve into her backstory and kind of some historical context about the antagonist kind of thing. So those are the two scenes I have right now going on in my head, and I think that I can probably get myself to at least about 3,000 words, I would say, maybe more than that by the time I get through that one. I do still have the goal of achieving 10,000 words at this point this month, but like I said before, I just am kind of writing scenes as I'm thinking of them. I'm taking the time to really make sure I have good ideas for scenes and then putting them down when I have, you know, the motivation to, as opposed to forcing myself with this one, because this one is more so for fun. It's kind of a general idea of what I plan on doing, because I have to do a lot of research before I feel like I can comfortably get super involved with this story. It's not like my mystery novel where I was just able to pound out scenes like nobody's business and not do really much research, because I didn't have to do a whole lot, and kind of when I had to, it was as I was writing, and it was quick to something to look up kind of a thing. But with this one, it's going to take me a lot more time, because I have to really understand this historical figure I'm using in the story, and then from there craft a kind of backstory for her leading up to what exactly happens, so that we can kind of understand why she is the antagonist of the story. So yeah, that's kind of my goal for this week, is to get those two scenes written in the next couple of days, get Crazy Rich Asians done today, and probably get through Children of Blood and Bone this week. I want to try to finish it in a few days, but because it's a fantasy too, I also want to kind of take my time with it if I can, or take as much time with it as I need to, because it's a fantasy that I've been really wanting to get into, and I just want to be able to like really fully absorb it. But I do also want to try to get through more books, because other than my audiobooks, this is the only book I'll have read for this month. The audiobook I'm finishing up here, that I should be finishing up with in the next couple hours, is So Let's Talk About Race by Ileoma Oluo. Another kind of nonfiction book discussing race and the issues that Black Americans especially have when it comes to the different types of issues surrounding around African Americans. Things like education, and then also even talking about like cultural aspects, like how people perceive like their hair, or how children in the education system are basically looked at as troublesome, and you know, all these different things. basically dictating, in a sense, how African Americans in society, from the moment they're born in American society, are set up to fail in a lot of ways. And it does draw back to some things I had heard in The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. There are some references to that with things that Michelle Alexander had discussed in that, with mass incarceration and the war on drugs that took place in the 80s and going into the 90s and things of that nature. It's a very timely piece that basically discusses all different things in terms of race, like cultural appropriation and police brutality and all these different things. So it's a really good resource, I think, for those of us who are white who want to understand more about what the conversation of race is and exactly kind of what a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement is really going for and what they're trying to help with eradicating in our society, and what exactly is the issue that Black people have in terms of how they are treated in American society. And I think that this one in particular does delve more into like how exactly they're treated, whereas The New Jim Crow focuses more on how essentially the war on drugs led to this thing of mass incarceration of African Americans and other people of color within our prison systems. Like, it's a very centered idea, but it leads back to so many other different things regarding history of African American treatment. Whereas, so let's talk about race, is more of like, here is how people are being treated now, and then referencing to things in the past to help us understand why people are being treated this way in today's society still, and how maybe that has changed over the course of time, like how, things about Black people's hair have changed over the course of time, and how educators over time have started to view African American students, especially those that, may come from families that are, not stable, things of that nature. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting audiobook, and I highly recommend it for those of you that are looking to expand your thoughts and expand your horizons within understanding what exactly the issue is when it comes to racism in our country. And this one in particular, so let's talk about race, is really just understanding the different facets of African American culture and how they are viewed within American society, and how they feel constantly attacked because of the things that they have experienced in the past, and how Americans still, white Americans specifically, how a lot of them still just don't understand that what they're doing is either microaggressive or is racist in terms of discussing about things about like their particular culture. Okay, so random thing. I was just scrolling on Twitter, taking a little bit of a break from work. And every now and then on Twitter, I see videos of TikToks of people doing like, oh, do I know this song or not? Of like certain eras of songs. A lot of it's usually like mid-2000s, mid-2010s or whatever. And it's like all these real like babies, like these little children basically to me, because I feel so old. My freaking God. I don't even have TikTok. Okay, I don't like the idea of TikTok. It's not something I'm interested in. My sister adores it though, okay? And she's a 2000 baby. I'm a 1997 baby. But I just watched one where there was a guy who was born in 2003 and there was a girl born in 2006. And the guy is like basically reacting to the girl going through this TikTok of what songs they may or may not know. And almost all of them, like One Direction, Ellie Goulding, that song Glad You Came, that was like a huge hit in like 2000, like the mid 2010s. Call Me Maybe, she didn't even know half of these songs. Like there was a Maroon 5 song she knew and a Kelly Clarkson song she knew, and that was it. And I'm just sitting there and watching this guy react to these. Like he pretty much knows all of them because he remembers the songs, obviously having been around. And he's like so shocked at this. And I just sit there and I feel so old because I see other videos like this that float around on Twitter from TikTok. Like I remember there was this group, these two girls, and they were basically reacting to whether or not they knew songs from like the mid 2000s. And I knew every single one of them because I grew up in that time. And I remember my sister and I were watching that particular one, and we looked at each other, and she just turned 20 in February, mind you. We both looked at each other and we're like, we are fucking old. Like, this is weird. Like, I don't understand. I mean, like, I grew up with a bunch of different music growing up. I grew up with, like the mid 2000s, and I remember the 2010s. My sister was a huge One Direction fan when they were around, and 5SOS, like, she was a huge fan of them. I wasn't so much. But she and I both, though, grew up with like 90s and 80s and a little bit of 70s music because of our parents and our grandparents. And so like I grew more to love the 80s and like 90s rock and stuff like that, and that got me into like rock and roll now and scream and metal and all those things. Like that was kind of how my whole, music taste progressed. My sister is more of like the rap, country, like mainstream stuff. Like she's more into that, which is fine by me, whatever. But there was a point in time where like, especially in my formative years of life, when I was like in late elementary school, early middle school, like even into high school, that, there were certain songs I could pick out because we listened to the radio quite often. My family had a very eclectic taste in music, and I think I do to some extent. I just prefer a certain genre of music. But like all of these songs in that first TikTok I talked about with the guy and the girl, like I knew every single one of them because I listened to the radio so much growing up. Like I remember like very specific songs that I would listen to in car rides like with my parents, and like having jam out sessions and all these things. And there's these like, little itty bitty babies that are just listening to this music and doing TikToks, reacting to these songs, and they don't know half of them. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I feel so fucking old at 23 years old. You people should not be making me feel this old. I am still considered a young adult. What the hell is going on? Okay guys, so I just finally finished Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. It only took me nearly 2 weeks to read it, but I'm going to end up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. I think that it truly deserves it. From everything I've said over the last couple of weeks with it, I think the story in general is just really interesting when it talks about the idea of like wealth culture when it comes to countries like Singapore, where a lot of the population is filled with like billionaires of people that are old money, new money, all these different things. And it delves into a lot of ideas about how that affects different kinds of relationships, especially when you have people who marry into a family that it has a lot of money. There is a character whose husband she believes is cheating on her, and she's trying to figure out how to deal with that because there could be some backlash with it. And then we have Nick, who is bringing his Chinese American girlfriend along to this big wedding of his best friends. And so there's a lot of rumors and a lot of things going on about how Rachel is that, people are kind of like trying to dig into, because since she's not from the family, she's not from any of the affluent families in Singapore, everyone thinks that she might be a gold digger, things of that nature. There's a lot of talk about with Eleanor, Nick's mother, about how she really wants him to marry somebody that actually is from a good family, because she wants him to end up taking over the money that he will eventually inherit from likely his grandmother. All these different things. Like there's so many nuances to each of these characters and like what their motivations are. And truthfully, a lot of them, you just feel angry because they're just meddling in things they shouldn't be meddling in. But this is kind of almost the culture that has been developed in this kind of a community, because every single person that's involved in this community that hasn't moved away is incredibly nosy. They're snobby with each other. They feel like if you don't have as much money or more money than they do, that you are not worth anything, and so many other various different things regarding like your standing based on how much money you have. But it also is really interesting because this book is supposed to be kind of a satire on those things. It's supposed to poke fun at those things and kind of highlight some of the issues that come from this kind of a community. And I feel like it did a really good job with that. I feel like this story really highlighted a lot of the issues that we have with wealthy communities and kind of the obtuseness of every person that's involved with it, because it seems that the majority of them feel like all that there is in the world is money, and if you don't have it, you're worth nothing, and that's not necessarily the case. What I love, though, is also that this story made me really feel for Rachel and Nick. Like, very quickly, I got attached to them. I felt very protective of them. I felt especially protective of Rachel when we were getting into her trying to communicate and trying to get interactive with Nick's family and his friends and the people he grew up around, because they were treating her like crap. And I felt so protective of her, despite not really feeling like in the beginning I had any connection to her. But I feel like as the story went on, I just became so protective of her, and now I think of her as like this precious little thing that I just want to like have the best things happen to because she deserves it. She's so open and loving, and she's funny. And I feel like that, it's one of those stories where like I wish people would actually like care about her personality and whether or not she's actually like a good person, as opposed to how much money she may or may not have or whose family she may or may not be a part of. But then you have characters like Nick, who basically doesn't want really a lot to do with that. He kind of just lives his own life, and you kind of sit and scratch your head like, how is this guy so very different from his family? But truthfully, it was because he got himself the hell out of there at a time where he knew it was time for him to leave, because he was not like the rest of his family. And it shows, because I feel like if he had stayed with this family, he would never be the kind of man he is now that I think he's perfect for Rachel. I think he's wonderful, he's kind, he is very attentive, and he understands that, that when he messes up big time, and he has to do something to fix it. And he acknowledges when he makes mistakes. He's not like some of these rich men in the story where, oh, I make a mistake, I'm gonna like completely brush it off and never speak about it. It's the woman's fault. It's all these other things' fault, as opposed to it being my own fault. I would like to hear, though, anyone who is of Asian descent that has read the Crazy Rich Asians series, if you found it to be interesting, if you found it to be any way accurate with what you know of wealthy culture in the Asian countries. I just would love to know some of the more own voices reviews of this. And I think I'm going to go on to Goodreads too and read some reviews of it to see what other people thought of it, because I know some people were a little on the fence with it, but personally, I enjoyed it. I found it fun. I found it very funny at times, but it also did bring to light some very important things about money and wealth and the lack of compassion that people have in these kind of wealthy families, because all they're focused on is having money and making money, and that being the end all be all of everything. So I did also then finish the audiobook for So You Want to Talk About Race, which I gave another 5 out of 5 stars to. I love that book a lot. Those kind of nonfiction books, I feel like if I really gain something from it, or I feel like I understand something a lot better than I did when I went into the book at first, I immediately give it a 5 out of 5 stars, because that's the intent of the book. There's an intent behind me reading it, which is to learn something and to understand something I didn't before, and understand it clearly to where I can then apply it to my life later on. And I definitely feel that with the new Jim Crow and Still You Want to Talk About Race, they both gave me not only like emotional and physical reactions to what I was reading and how I was responding to that, I also feel like I learned a lot about myself and how I may, not fully understand how race affects different things in our society, but they both have taught me a lot. And I think, and I've already been having conversations with people about those kinds of things and how those things that I've learned in those books are so important to discuss in my day-to-day life. So I think that I've gained a lot from it. I did, though, get the audiobook for Becoming by Michelle Obama, which is a book I've kind of wanted to read for a while. I don't know much about Michelle Obama. I mean, I truthfully, when Obama was president, I did not really know much about him. Wasn't really invested in politics or anything. So I am interested to read from the First Lady, the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, and kind of learn about kind of her growing up and having been the First Lady and how that was, because I know that this is kind of like a memoir of her life leading up to kind of what she is now. So I'm pretty excited. I heard a lot of people really, really enjoyed it, and they found themselves crying. So maybe I'll get emotional. I don't know, but I'm pretty excited to get into it nonetheless. Okay, so I've just read the first chapter of Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I got a couple more minutes before my break is over, but so far, very interesting. We learn quite a bit of the world, essentially from the very first chapter. First being that the main character, Zeli, is basically a part of a clan of people from this place called Orisha, where essentially she is like a descendant of magi. She is a descendant of magic wielding people, but it is told very early on in the chapter that the magic essentially has gone. It was sucked away, supposedly because magi that were in power in the past had basically abused it, and so the gods had taken away the magic as a punishment for all of the bad things that the magi had done. And there is talk of the fact that there is a king currently who has kind of instigated this hatred towards descendants of these magi. There is a lot of second-class citizen-like things happening within this world. In the scene that we come in on, Zeli is basically learning, or is in the middle of a fight, or she's starting a fight, basically training of sorts, because she's been being trained how to fight for several years now by this woman named Mama Agba, and essentially when they're in the midst of the fight, these guards come by who work for the king, and they take away taxes from Mama Agba because she is harboring a lot of descendants of magi. A lot of the girls that she trains, she helps take care of, and she gets taxed for them, which is kind of interesting. I wonder why there is a tax on harboring these descendants. Like, why is it that normal looking people are getting taxed for it? Because they talk about how Mama Agba doesn't really even have any magical abilities. She doesn't have the white hair that would typically denote a magic wielding individual, even though she is from a magi family, and she is the one that's being taxed for having all of the magi descendant females. And so it's interesting because I guess I didn't expect that to come up. I wonder why that is. I don't know if the girls themselves, when they hit a certain age, would have to pay like ridiculous amounts of taxes, or what kind of is expected of that. But it's interesting that they talk about how this woman, who's kind of like their caretaker, their leader of sorts, she's the one that has to pay massive amounts of taxes for them. And we also find out that Zeli lost her mother in what was called the Raid, which happened 11 years prior, where a bunch of magi were basically killed off because they were trying to keep the magic from ever coming back. The ruling class of Orisha was really trying to eliminate the kind of magic within the world after it had basically disappeared. And pretty much everyone doesn't believe it's coming back, so they're trying to kill off all of the magi descendants. And unfortunately, Zeli's mother was caught up in that and was killed, and so she thinks that her father kind of blames her for it in a lot of ways, or her father is very still upset with that 11 years later, and which rightly so. Very interesting, a lot divulged very early on in the book, but not too much to where I felt like it was very info dumpy. It was enough to where it gave us a good idea of how the world's set up, at least a good glimpse of it by looking at it from one kind of perspective, which is the magi individuals. I do believe there are two other perspectives that play into the story. I believe one of them is a prince and one of them is a runaway princess of the kingdom, so I'm excited to see how that ties in. I heard a lot of people say that they really liked the way the story kind of built these three perspectives. Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It is about 10:21 in the morning. I have been working quite a bit this morning. I have this large project that kind of is going to take a lot of time that I've been kind of slowly working on over the day, and I'm on a break. I just reached page 86 of Children of Blood and Bone. I, according to my Kindle, am now 16% of the way through. Chapter 9 is basically where I'm at. So essentially what I've learned so far after reading past the first few chapters is I have already seen both of the other perspectives in the story. So we have Zelly, who is what's called a diviner of sorts. She's basically a descendant of magical wielding people, but she does not have magic herself, as in this world magic was supposedly eradicated completely, and several of the magi, or people who did have magic, were killed off, and that included Zelly's mother. Zelly basically meets up with a character named Amari, who is the crown princess of Orisha. Amari basically runs away from home because after witnessing the death of a friend of hers who supposedly was a diviner herself, and after basically finding out that there is a scroll that the king has that can bring back magic to otherwise non-wielding individuals that were descendants of magi, she basically runs away because she feels that because she knows of what the scroll can do, and she was, very close to a diviner, and she's a bit of a sympathizer, she thinks that her father is going to kill her. And then the other perspective is Amari's brother, Inan, who essentially we find out, knows about the fact that Amari has run away from the kingdom, and he is sent off to go and find her. And when they are both in Lagos, which is a big merchant town in Orisha, Amari and Zelly meet up, and Zelly tries to help her without really understanding, for one, that she's a crown princess, and two, that the crown princess has done this really heinous act of stealing the scroll. And Zelly, when she meets her and understands the scroll, starts to think that there may be a chance that magic can come back, but she's not really 100% certain. She thinks that it might be too good to be true, kind of thing. She's very hesitant to believe what Amari is telling her because she is the princess, and she also is in a lot of trouble for helping her escape. So she's trying to basically not really count her chickens before they hatch at this point. So that's pretty much all I know so far in the first less than 20% of the book. The idea, I do believe, though, is that Zelly ends up finding out that magic is able to come back to this world, and I think it's up to her to bring back magic to this world because so many people have lost their lives for having used magic in the past, and the people who are descendants of the magi that had been killed off are still to this day in the book being treated poorly. It's basically like they are seen as lower class. They're seen as they're called maggots, is kind of the common name that they're given, because they kind of just don't have a purpose in this world anymore. And it's very much if they have any kind of suspicion towards them regarding anything, according to the guards or the soldiers there, they can pretty much be killed with no care in the world. So it's a very kind of dark world in a lot of ways because of that, but this is a YA fantasy, so it's not as super dark and dangerous as maybe it would be if it was an adult fantasy. Today, there's just not a lot going on. It's just a pretty quiet Wednesday. I do need to go out and take a package out to be delivered because somebody bought one of the books I was planning on selling. They basically purchased My Enemy's Cradle, so I have to go get that taken to the UPS store so that it can get sent out to them. Otherwise, I think today I'm going to focus on some wedding stuff. I'm going to basically write out my bridal shower invitations because we set my bridal shower for a month from today, actually on August 15th, and so I need to get invitations sent out here really soon. I don't think we're doing a whole heck of a lot. My mom is mostly just making a event page for my family. I will be sending actual physical invitations to my friends, because we're basically gonna have it in like 2 different stages, where like we're gonna have the actual like bridal shower party in like the afternoon, and that's gonna have like a bunch of my family that is gonna want to come and stuff like that, maybe a couple friends or something along those lines, like family friends. And then in the evening portion of the day, we're gonna have like a little bonfire outside of my parents' house, and kind of just have that as like my party thing with my friends. So that's gonna be fun. I just wanted something really chill with my friends, and that way we had less people at both, so we could, stay safe and obviously wear our masks and stuff like that, and keep, social distance in a sense, like keeping 6 feet between people. But I did want to still have that because, especially with how I've been hearing things have been going, I already know that there was a couple that was supposed to get married that I know that were supposed to get married in September, and they've already had their venue say that they had to cancel. So I'm thinking that probably sometime in August, maybe early September, I'm gonna know for sure whether or not we're gonna have our wedding, or if we're gonna have to either postpone it, or if we're gonna have to do just the ceremony on the 31st of October and then have a reception much later, like further down the line, like in the summer or something. And then that's gonna also then affect if I'm even gonna go on a honeymoon with Robert, because we're not really 100% certain how travel is. We are planning on flying down to the southern part of the US and then basically road tripping throughout the South, but I don't even know for certain. I know that you can still buy airline tickets, but I don't know for certain if that's gonna still be a thing here in the next couple months. We're basically having to play it by ear at this point. But as far as I know, everything's still going on, everything's still happening. It would just be kind of something where everybody is gonna have to like take the necessary precautions and everything that they need to, and I will as well. I feel like that's really important to me. I did do some writing a little bit, not really writing, more so note-taking. So I haven't really been in the best like writing mood. I've kind of just not had the energy to, but I did, when was it, Monday night, I think, I did sit down and actually write out some notes about some particular kind of sets of scenes I want to make sure I do end up writing. I just think maybe right now I put too much pressure on myself to write during Camp NaNoWriMo. With everything going on, I feel like it's just not the right time, I think, to work on this, or I'm not really inspired to write particular scenes. Like I said in the past, I've kind of had this thought of basically needing to do research before I feel like I can completely write the story for this historical figure. So I did write down some particular, like, more specific scenes I wanted to make sure I wrote. So like scenes with my main character and this person, my main character and the antagonist, my antagonist's specific scenes I want to write, like especially the ones that are flashback scenes, for them to kind of build a context as to why they are the way they are. So that's kind of what I did, and that was about 158 words, I think, so not really that much. But like I said, I feel like I'm just not really super inspired to write anything at the moment. I feel like I had one scene in my head I was really kind of interested in writing, but when I went to sit down to write it, like all the inspiration basically just went away. I wasn't really feeling it. And that's kind of just been my whole thing. I think I'm still really stuck on my other book because I haven't really heard back from a lot of my beta readers that I had asked for. Everybody's been like super busy with their own lives, really. And so I have one friend who did message me a couple days ago saying that she's working through it right now. So I'm gonna expect to hopefully hear from her in like the next week or so with her thoughts. My mom and my sister are also trying to read it, but they also have their own lives. My mom does work in a sense over the summer, and my sister works quite a bit, so they don't really have a lot of time to sit and read like they would. And my sister's also taking summer classes for college and is getting ready to move here actually in a little bit more than a month to her townhouse apartment that she has, where she's going to be going to school next fall. So things are kind of crazy for them. And then I just haven't heard from anybody else that I sent the book to. But truthfully, I feel like the one beta read I got back was a really good jumping off point. I feel like it's very easy for me to make a lot of changes with that beta read because there were some really great things that were brought up, and they also found a lot of my typos, which I was very appreciative of, so I can go back and fix those. So I think that maybe if I get this other beta read here real soon, I might just jump into edits and then maybe send it off after edits to my person I'm thinking of that I want to pay to read and give me critiques on, because I trust her opinion. I really like what she's done. She's a YouTuber I follow that runs her own editing business, and she kind of does stuff that I want to end up doing eventually. I'm not really comfortable right now with jumping all into doing that. Like, I help one of my friends edit her college papers just for free because I have the time, but I've been thinking recently about doing like an editing business, but it would take a lot for me, I think, to get that up and running. And I currently at the moment don't feel comfortable doing that. I think I might wait to start a business like that until probably after I get my technical writing certificate, which I will be starting in 2021, hopefully. I'm going to be filling out like applications and stuff here closer to the fall when they'll be taking some of that stuff. So my hope is that like in 2021, I'll start that. And that's a 3-semester program. So by like the middle of 2022, I should be done with it. And then probably within either by the end of that year or going into 2023, my plan is to start up a editing business of sorts. And maybe even freelance writing, depending, because I would like to do that. That's kind of what my plan was when I wanted to go into English, was I wanted to go into editing and stuff like that. But I feel like I haven't really made steps toward it because I've been nervous to do it, only because I'm still like fairly new at the job I have. I like the job I have, but where I'm at now in my life, there's so many things going on that right now trying to start a business, I think is just a really bad idea, especially with this pandemic. I don't feel like it's a right time to do something like that. And even before the pandemic hit, I had told myself that once I got my technical writing certificate, I would feel more comfortable, I think, with starting up my own business. So next few years, this is kind of like a 3-5 year plan really with what I want to do, and I do have goals. I just have to get through certain steps before I reach that goal of starting my own business. So that's kind of my plan. I just kind of wanted to get somewhere and see what I kind of thought about, in terms of like, is this something I want to make my career out of? And I don't necessarily think that I would like to make a career out of the job I am at now. I feel like it isn't like, it's not bad by any means, it's not stifling, but it's not super challenging, I think, either. And I feel like starting my own business would be a bigger challenge, but I think for a while it would basically have to be that for the first couple years, it's more of a side thing. It's not like a super big thing, unless I, end up blowing up like this YouTuber I follow, where her business, it's like completely night and day, where how she started off, but she also has like a large following. So she started off with getting a few projects here and there, and now it's like she's having to book stuff out months in advance because she has so many people looking at her to do some work. So until I feel like I can get comfortable with that and feel like I have a good setup and I have a constant flowing income with all of that, I feel like I would have to probably for the first couple of years make it more of a side gig. So I just finished my lunch, but beforehand I spent about 2 hours of my morning discussing my book with my friend. So I was saying earlier, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my Project Mummy book, but I spent about 2 hours, like I said, just talking to one of my friends about the book, and she was like helping me with figuring out all these different things about it, asking me questions, and literally starting a Google Doc form as I was working while we were talking, so that she could get all of my stuff down I was talking about with her, so that I could go back and reference it later. And she gave me some ideas about what to do. And that makes me even more excited to work on this. I was able to work through a lot of the issues that I was having, like things I hadn't really been thinking about yet, things that I was questioning about what would work, what would not. And my friend Megan, who is absolutely amazing, I adore her. She's one of my best friends since I was literally a kid. Because she loves reading and stuff. Like, she's not a huge writer, but she loves talking about stories. And one of the things that I love the most about her is like she is so open and she just asks so many good questions. She asks me the questions that I want someone to ask when it comes to building my story, and she asks the questions about the world and about the characters that are things that I don't necessarily think of off the top of my head, but want someone to be able to ask me so I can fill in those blanks that I need. I think this book's gonna have a little bit more to do with the mummy than I had originally expected. I wanted it to be originally like almost a carbon copy of, in a sense, of the mummy, but having it placed in a different time with different people with a different kind of bad guy. And then as I was working on the first part of it, I started to think that it probably would be better just to have one element from the mummy, which was the bringing back of something to life and wanting to destroy the world. But now the book, now there's so many other nuances that we've discussed that are going to be involved with it that I'm really excited about. Okay, so this is my goal right now, is 10,000 words. This is how much I have done total so far in the month. And then down here, today I ended up working with about 831 words, which included a document that I basically had my friend help me with catching notes on stuff that I was talking about with her today, like I was talking about earlier. And I did actually write a small scene, about 180 words worth, that I want to include somewhere in the book that deals with my main antagonist and like a flashback scene, but I don't know where it's gonna go as of yet. I don't really feel like I know the whole structure of everything as of yet, but this is good. This is progress. Even though most of this is due to my notes, this is definitely helping me get to where I want to be. So the reason I'm counting notes and outline stuff with what I'm doing is because truthfully, I don't think I have nearly enough stuff right now to get me to that 10,000 words, but I feel like anything that I write in regards to the book itself, whether that's notes, working on the outline, making like things for me to, writing down things for me to remember to look up, or actually writing a scene of some kind in the book, it is all work towards the book. So I feel like that all should count, because truthfully, I have this set up where this is more of a prep kind of Camp NaNoWriMo for myself. Like, this is really just me getting the prep work done. So I feel like anything that I do, whether that's note-taking, writing stuff down for me to remember, actual writing scene work, stuff like that, it all counts for it. It all makes sense to have it all count for it. This is only my third writing session of the entire month, and we are already now at about the halfway point of the month. So I don't know how much is going to get done. I do, though, have possibly a scene that I'm gonna start working on tomorrow. It is the actual scene where the main character essentially goes through and brings back the antagonist from the dead. So today I wrote, like I said, a flashback scene with the antagonist that is very small. It's not much. It's kind of just like the first images that come to my head when it comes to a flashback scene for her. But I think that the scene that I'm gonna write tomorrow, which is the bringing back the dead to life scene, what I'm going to kind of call it, is going to be more extensive, because it is basically coming off the tail end of something that happens earlier in the book. Basically, it's at a party, and so it's kind of, though, one of those things where it's happening at the tail end of one thing, and then it basically is like the catalyst, though, of the big point of the story. So I'm excited to write that one. I think that one's going to be interesting because it is going to require a lot more time for me to work on. I also am kind of going on this thing where, like, if I have a concrete image in my head, I'm going to write on that until I run out of images in my head, and then I'm going to stop, because if I run out of the image in my head, I don't feel comfortable going further in the scene. But there is the possibility that I could extend the scene further than what the image I have is, because sometimes what happens is when I get an image in my head of what the scene looks like and how it goes, if I go to write it, it actually builds further as I write. So it all really depends on how exactly, with this book in particular, how the scene is going to come out onto the page. Is it gonna stifle me where I'm gonna have like one major image and then have to just go off from that? Am I gonna like be able to write it and actually like continue on with like a full chapter or something? Who the hell knows? This book is literally writing it how it wants it to be written, and it is like, if I try to fight with it, it's not gonna let me write it. So what the hell is going on here? Y'all see this? Good morning, everybody. It is a very rainy Thursday. It's currently 9:15 in the morning. I need to get back to work here, but I just wanted to hop on real quick to kind of give you guys a rundown of what today is going to be. So obviously I'm working today. I was supposed to have like 3 meetings, but 2 of them got canceled because they're basically like update meetings that we do. One of them is about once a week for our entire department, and there were like no new announcements or anything, so they canceled it. The other one is a twice weekly meeting with my particular team to see what's going on, if there's any announcements, if there's anything that needs to be taken care of. So that one got canceled as well because there were no real updates. So where I'm at now, I did read a couple more chapters of Children of Blood and Bone last night before I went to bed. I am on currently page 102. I'm on chapter 11 with Inan, and I'm about 19% of the way through the book. So I think that today I'm going to try to read some more of it on my breaks. I did take my first break though today just to watch YouTube videos because I'm not feeling the best. With the rain that came in, both Robert and I were kind of getting headaches and stuff. He's currently sleeping at the moment, hopefully. He also hasn't been sleeping very well last couple days, so I hope he's able to actually get some sleep today. And then I just woke up with a bit of a headache, but I was able to knock it out pretty early because the rain, I think, for the most part has stopped at this point, but it still is pretty gloomy. Let me check to see, though, what the weather radar says. So yeah, it looks like even today there's going to be more rain heading our way. It's 10 to 10 in the morning, and I already don't want to deal with anything today. I want to go back to bed. Good morning. It's Friday. So this morning, first off, internet was going in and out. Don't know why. No internet outages in my area. For some reason, our 5G network just completely wanted to die on us, so I had to switch over to the 2G one. Then, because I thought maybe my work computer was acting funny because it couldn't hold a connection, which was mainly the big reason that I was noticing all of this stuff happening, I restarted it. And then my VPN network, which basically makes it so that people can't really see the stuff I'm working on unless they're on my laptop, that wouldn't let me in. So I had to basically go through this whole rigmarole and get a new password so that I could get stuff to be able to work today. So that was great. And then on Robert's way home this morning, he calls me and tells me that somebody at his work tested positive for COVID. So it's been a day. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I want to go back to bed. I want to go snuggle with Robert and not work, but I have to. Better news, I did make some reading progress yesterday with Children of Blood and Bone. I only read about 50 pages though, just because yesterday, like during the day, I was like so focused in with like listening to music and stuff, like with work, that I kind of just did that. I didn't write yesterday because I was going to write a scene that was going to basically be the scene where the main character brings the antagonist back from the dead, but I didn't feel necessarily super comfortable with it just because I felt like I needed to do some more research with this antagonist, and I needed to like really sit down and do some other stuff. Like I basically decided that instead of writing, I wanted to go take a bath last night, which was very nice, very needed. And that's actually where I got a lot of my reading done yesterday, was in the bath. And then I read some more before I went to bed last night. I also went and got my nails done yesterday, which was nice. That was very much needed. I really like going back and getting my nails done now. But who knows, now things may get closed up again. We're not really sure what's going on. A lot of people right now are trying to figure out in the US whether or not students should be able to go back into school buildings. I think that the state of Michigan is going to try, or at least the governor is trying to make it so that we don't have students in schools like physically, but they still may do online stuff, which I think would be better, considering that the teachers and educators and social workers and stuff that are in schools, they're already considered glorified babysitters at this point. And adding on to, with this pandemic, the kind of nursing that would need to be done and trying to make all these accommodations with like the way the classes are set up, which are usually already super small unless you go to like a super rich school. It's basically going to cause more issues, I think, having students in buildings, not just from the proximity perspective, but then also trying to accommodate for different students who may have like different health issues, things of that nature, trying to make sure that they're taken care of. And just especially like back in my hometown, the schools that like we had, there's not a lot of room in the classrooms to do like 6 feet of distance between students. Like it's not possible. And even our gym, like it probably could accommodate like a couple, like 3 or 4 classrooms of people. But classrooms are typically anywhere between like 28 to 31 kids, I think, usually. At least that's how it was when I was in high school. But it makes more sense, I think, right now with this pandemic still going on, to continue doing like online schooling. And I know that for a lot of people, that is not how they work. That is not what they're able to do. They need like an actual teacher there to physically show them how things are done, especially with like math and science and stuff like that. And there's just a lot of things you can't teach online. I understand that. There are a lot of things you just aren't able to teach online, and it would basically be a little bit more difficult to do teaching online than it would be to be in like a physical classroom where you could walk around and talk to the students and all of that. But I think in general, for the safety of the children who could be possibly at a higher risk for getting COVID, which we're already apparently seeing that children are getting sicker and sicker because of the COVID thing, with, you know, parents not being, you know, super attentive to the fact that their children are going out and, you know, especially the older ones are going out and partying and all these things. Like, it just makes more sense for their safety and for the lowered health risk to have the students still be doing school from home. And I know that like once the pandemic hit, there were a lot of parents that were frustrated because they may have to work and they may not be able to hire a babysitter of sorts. And so it was having to decide whether or not they actually go back to work, or if, you know, they leave the kids by themselves. Like, I understand that there's a lot more issues going into that than it is just, you know, actually like getting students to do school from home. I understand there are a lot of frustrations with that, but I just feel like that it's in everybody's best interest to stay home as much as they can, because truthfully, if we do that, adhere to the precautions that are listed by, you know, a lot of people, I just feel like it is more beneficial to have us do stuff from home to make sure that we try to limit the spread of this virus that's still rampant, that is still going around. And I feel like, especially with putting a bunch of people in one building like that, like in a school, it's going to be a hotbed for illnesses. It is going to literally be a huge place of spreading the disease. And so it's like almost kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's a pretty straightforward thing. Like, if we don't want this to continue to spread, we have to keep the students from being in physical school buildings, because otherwise, especially if you have one who may be asymptomatic, they could be a carrier and spread it to everybody else. And then we have a huge issue. It seems like a day where it just, everything and anything wants to piss me off today. So I don't know how many of you guys have watched this video or heard about some of the issues that have been going on within book Twitter and booktube and all these things. So many of us know about the George Floyd murders and how the Black Lives Matter movement has been like super, super big over the last couple of months, has been getting a lot of traction, and how we've been really trying, myself included, to, read more from authors of color, things of that nature, supporting things like that. There's another issue within all of that I have never really addressed because it was something I didn't feel very comfortable addressing right now, but I think in a general sense, there is something about it I can address. So let me start from the beginning. In June of 2020, last month, a company called LitJoy Crate decided to put a dream catcher of sorts. I'm not sure if it was something that had a dream catcher on it or if it was an actual dream catcher itself. They decided to put it in their subscription box for that month. Now, to many white people, this may seem as not a huge deal. Dream catchers are cool, they're pretty, they're supposed to do some kinds of things that you might not really know much about. Here's the thing though. Just like how with Black people you shouldn't wear box braids if you're a white person, if you're not Native, and if you're especially not Ojibwe Native, you shouldn't use a dream catcher. It's called cultural appropriation. It is a item used by a particular Native tribe for a specific purpose. It is not for your fancy tattoos. It is not for you to use on your quotes for Pinterest or any of that white fucking bullshit. Now, personally, I am not Ojibwe. I am Native in a sense. I don't see myself as Native because I pass as white very, very clearly. You guys know I am pale as a motherfucking sheep. I don't pass for Native. However, I do have Native blood. My family is traced back to the Chippewa tribe that is mostly set in the Midwest. My grandmother is either half or full-blooded. I'm not 100% sure. I think she may have said at one point she was full because I believe she said that her mother was even possibly a full-blooded Native American, but truthfully, I don't know. I don't know much about my own fucking heritage, but I do know that my entire life growing up, I was told that my family was descended from Chippewa Native American. Truthfully, one of the things that pisses me off is my own stupidity of my own heritage. I feel like I, growing up, never learned anything about my heritage. My grandmother never really taught me anything in terms of what certain things about my tribe were or any kind of cultural things about my tribe, because truthfully, I don't even think she learned. She may have learned some things here and there, but I don't ever remember a time her telling me that she did certain cultural things with her mother that were direct cultural aspects from her tribe. Now, this may be for a lot of reasons. My grandmother was born in the 50s, and so it is entirely possible that her mother assimilated if she was a full-blooded Native American. My grandmother also was adopted into a new family when her mother remarried, and so it was one of those things where it is possible that some of the traditions that her mother may have had, if she was full-blooded Native American, which I believe she was, they may have been lost. And so I was never taught those things. My mother, my grandmother's daughter, only daughter for that matter, never taught me anything about my own heritage because I don't even believe my mother learned much about her heritage. And there were times growing up where I remember, especially when my mom went to Central Michigan University, which is a university that has a lot of ties with the Chippewa Native American tribe because the reservation of the Chippewa tribe is within Isabella County, which is where the university is located, within Isabella County of Michigan. There were times I remember when my mother was in school where they would be holding powwows for the tribe. The tribe itself would be there to do these ceremonial powwows for different things, usually in the fall. And my mother would take my grandmother to go see them because that was something that they really enjoyed. They had a good time seeing them. I personally never saw them. What I will say though is I think one of the moments in my life that I feel like I really missed out a lot on my own heritage learning was when I was taking a class based in mythology and all these things, and we had started to learn a little bit about Native American folklore. It wasn't a very extensive area because we had so many other areas to look into when it came to myth, and I kind of hate the way that the class was structured in some ways. I think we should have spent equal time with each area of folklore, but I digress. But the one time that we did focus on Native American folklore in general, we had I believe he was Ojibwe Native American. I could be wrong, but his name is Ty Defoe. He is a very, very popular Native performer, and he was absolutely amazing. He came in and he talked about some of the different folk tales that he had learned growing up, and he even actually performed some music for us, playing some instruments that were very, very used in his tribe, that had meaning, had produced a kind of sound that was unique to his particular tribe. And I kid you not, what happened was I was told by Ty to close my eyes and just listen to the music. And I kid you not, the entire time that this man was playing this music, I literally felt like this out-of-body experience where I kind of was transported back in time to what felt truly like a previous life of sorts. A previous life where I witnessed my entire family that I have now, but in a time where Native Americans still had actual agency over the land that is North America today. I had visions, what it felt like, real sensations, smells, even like I could feel the breeze in this cement room, basically. I could feel everything being in this kind of vision. There was one where I was standing in an open field and I could see buffalo going by on the field from like a great distance. I was like up on a hill and I could see what I believed to be like either brothers or cousins or some male family riding behind the buffalo, going off and hunting them. And I was watching them do this. And then it had transferred to another vision of myself walking through this lane where all of these teepees and wigwams and all of these it was like a whole town, basically. I was walking through and saying hello to all my neighbors and my family and all these different things. And I felt myself smiling and I could smell like the leather that they were tanning. I could smell food being made. And then it transferred to another vision. The last one that I had, which truthfully brought me to tears and is something that's hard for me to talk about. The last vision I had in that moment was a vision of myself in a medicine teepee, essentially. I'm not exactly sure what the proper term is, but it was a small room where my grandmother was laying down on a mat covered in a blanket made of some kind of animal hide. And she was sweating, breaking through some kind of fever. But she was really sick, and I could tell. And in the vision, all I'm doing is I'm just sitting there, holding onto her hand, praying. I was praying to God, just to the gods, that they heal my grandmother and they make her okay, because I wanted her around. And I remember finally when Ty had finished performing, waking up from all of that, and I actually realized I was crying, and I had several of my classmates that were sitting around me that had looked at me kind of funny because they were like, what happened? Because they didn't experience the same thing I did. None of them did. A lot of them were white, and so they didn't understand that what I had just gone through felt like I was reliving my own past. Like I was almost reliving a life that I had left so long ago that I had completely forgotten about and had never remembered experiencing until that moment. And it was very brief. It was all within the span of maybe a few minutes, but it truly felt like a lifetime at that moment. And ever since that moment, I felt like I never really paid much attention to my heritage, and I still haven't. Because truthfully, I've been lazy and I've had no time. And because I've had no time, I felt even more lazy because I just don't put the effort in to do my own research on my own heritage and on my own tribe. Truthfully, I don't even know if I would be considered part of the tribe because I don't know necessarily how they dictate who is really a part of the tribe, whether you have to be full-blooded or you have to be half, or if you have to be within some kind of delineation of it. But I know where I can go. The last time I spoke to my grandmother, which was fairly recently about this, she told me where I could access possibly the marriage records and things of that nature of her mother with her biological father. And that way I could try to trace back the heritage and try to find out exactly where the bloodline is, so I could try to figure out exactly how much of my DNA is Native American. All of that to say, though, is that I never truly felt like I was Native American because I spent all of my life essentially living a white life. I pass as white. I don't really believe I have many of the characteristics of a Native American person. If you look at my younger sister, Tori, at any point in time, in any of the videos that she may have been in, I highly doubt there is any, but if you were to look at her, you could see more of the Native American side in her, and even in my mother a little bit, because they have the higher cheekbone. They both have always had this ability to tan very easily in the sun, whereas I inherited my father's very pale and sensitive skin, where I burn as opposed to tan, and I don't tan for very long. Like I don't keep color in my skin as well as my sister or my mom do when it comes to like the summer. And so that was another reason why I always felt like I never really became a part of my heritage, was because like I said, I spent most of my life essentially assuming I was white. I didn't really understand that I wasn't any way Native because it never was brought up in my family. It was never really discussed. My grandmother would have these different things, different like totems and head busts of Native American heads and all these different things that would remind me that it is a part of my life, that is a part of my heritage, but it was never really fully discussed, and so I never felt like I had a real connection to any of that heritage. And it makes me sad because I feel like if I would have known about that so much more, I would be able to contribute more to this conversation of how important it is to listen to Indigenous people, listening to Indigenous authors, and understanding that just because you don't get something or just because you see something and think it's pretty doesn't mean that you should incorporate it in your white scheme of life. Like this whole Dreamcatcher thing with Litjoy Cray, and I'll get into the other point that I just made here a second ago with just because you didn't get it kind of thing, because there's a whole other story with that. But this Litjoy Crate thing that pisses me off the most is the fact that the apology was pretty half-assed. They basically like apologized to all Native Americans, which is like 900 plus tribes if you're looking in both North and South America. You really only had to apologize to one, and that's the Ojibwe, because the Ojibwe are the only tribe that I know of that use the Dreamcatcher. It just doesn't make sense to me why people think that these things are okay. Like, and I go back to the idea of like, if you know that box braids on a white person is cultural appropriation, if you can understand that, if you can understand the reason why that is a cultural appropriation thing, how is it that you can't understand that a dream catcher is the same, is also cultural appropriation? I don't get it. And why, and how is it that you can stand there and go out on Halloween dressing yourself up as a Native American person with the whole headdress and the tiny little midi dress or whatever, and you don't understand how that's harmful? You don't understand why that is damaging to someone who is Native and finds that offensive. You can understand one, how can you not understand the other? If you can't understand either, you need to really take a look at yourself and actually do your own fucking research and understand that when somebody that is in a marginalized community, whether that's Black, Indigenous, non-binary, gay, whatever it is, if they tell you that something is not right about what you're doing, if you are doing something that is offensive, you need to fucking listen to them, because you are the one that is appropriating or mocking or making fun of or making some kind of inappropriate gesture toward that marginalized community. Plain and simple. If it's offensive to them, it's offensive. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is offensive. Going back to this idea of the not getting it thing when it comes to the heritage or like culturalness of a group. There's a reviewer who basically, with this book called The Only Good Indian, I think was what it was called, by Stephen Graham Jones, who is a Blackfoot Cherokee Indian. I think that typically, like, it's a specific sect of Cherokee. I'm not 100% certain. Again, I don't know a lot about my own heritage to know how the tribes are set up, but the way it was described was that he's Blackfoot and I believe Cherokee. Basically, this reviewer, who was white, who had read the book, said that she couldn't really like the book because she didn't get a lot of the cultural aspects of the story. You rated a book lower because you couldn't understand the cultural pieces of it. And you're white. I would expect you wouldn't get it considering you're white. I wouldn't get it, more than likely, because it's not my tribe. However, even if I don't always get what's going on, I read Crazy Rich Asians. I didn't necessarily get all of the cultural aspects that came with Singapore and wealth culture, but I still enjoyed the shit out of that book because it was funny. I loved the characters. I loved the drama that came from it. You don't have to get anything regarding a cultural standpoint of the book. You can dislike a book if you don't like the characters, if you don't understand the plot of the story, if you don't understand maybe some things about the world that have nothing to do with the cultural aspect of it. If you don't like the writing style, that's fine. Go for it. Critique that. But you as a white individual, or you as someone who is not a part of a particular marginalized community, do not have a right to say that the representation is bad or doesn't make sense to you. You have no right, because you are not a part of that area, you are not a part of that marginalized community, to say whether or not that shit is accurate. And if you sit there and you're white and you're gonna tell me that a native story written by a native person doesn't make sense to you and the representation just completely falls flat for you, you can go fuck yourself. Because all that tells me is that you are so closed-minded and you are not even willing to accept that there is any kind of experience other than your own. Simple as that. You are not willing to let others' experience come to the forefront. All you want is your cookie cutter, vanilla ass bullshit that I'm fucking tired of. I'm fucking tired of it, okay? I want to see more of these. I didn't even know that there were indigenous fiction stories in YA or in publishing in general until this week. That is how marginalized this community is in publishing, because it is incredibly evident that in this particular instance, those stories aren't getting publicized. Those stories aren't being talked about. And it's evident because this is the first time I have heard of people like Stephen Graham Jones, people like Rebecca Roanhorse. I have never in my life heard of those two authors in particular, and there's plenty more. I've never heard of those authors until this week because those books were not being talked about, because they weren't being reviewed by people, because the only people reviewing them were native people that I hadn't even heard of before. I've never heard of some of these native booktubers that have been out here because booktube is mostly fucking white. We have this conversation so many fucking times where booktube and book Twitter are filled with white people, and that is all we see and that is all we hear, and we only hear their opinions. And if we're going to push for people like Black people to have more of a stance in book Twitter and booktube and bookstagram, we need to do the same for other marginalized communities. Asians, indigenous people, not just in the Americas, but indigenous people everywhere, because there are indigenous people in Australia, there are indigenous people in places like Indonesia. There are so many types of indigenous communities that do not get the same kind of traction that white authors do. Okay, I think that is all in terms of my soapbox. People have really been fucking trying me today. Given my own lack of knowledge of my own heritage, I may not have much room to speak on when it comes to this. I think in a general sense of wanting an equal spread of love to every kind of author there is out there, and understanding that cultural appropriation is a thing and needs to be kicked in the ass because it's fucking dumb watching all of these white people use things like dressing up on Halloween as Native American, or doing things like blackface when they know it's wrong, or wearing box braids when they look fucking ridiculous. Just in general, knowing that these things are not okay, I feel like I can speak on it. But I also understand that I almost have no room to speak on when it comes to the pain that this gives me, because I don't even know much about my own heritage. It would be different if an Indigenous person reading a book said that said Indigenous book that had that representation was wrong. That would be a whole different conversation. But this is not the conversation we're having. You white people who think that representation in a book doesn't fit your ideas, or doesn't seem realistic, or doesn't seem to be clear enough, fuck you. It's not your representation to critique. Critique other parts of the story. You have full reign of that, but don't go for the representation, because it's not your fucking representation to critique. Morning, everybody. It is Saturday. It is going on 11 o'clock. I just literally woke up within the last 15 minutes. I was very, very tired, I guess, last night, and I slept through the whole night until about 8:40 when Robert got home, and then I went back to bed because I was still tired. I was gonna get ready to sit down and do some filming today, but first, I have an Amazon package. I know this one is from my friend Adri, because unfortunately I found out a few days ago that she had tried to send me something for my birthday, and it was supposed to be here on the 5th, but nothing was here. Ryan, when he was here, did not see anything that had come up for me, because that was when I was on my vacation with Robert. So somehow it got lost in the mail. Even though they said that they delivered it, it never was here. Nobody saw it. So it must have gotten delivered to the wrong house or something. So a couple days ago, she had it resent, and I'm excited to see what she got me. Ah, that's satisfying. All right, so I haven't seen what it is. I'm gonna try to see if I can find the note first. Okay, here we go. So the note says, I've already read this and loved it, and I'm sure you will too. Also, I met the author for this, and he is really cool. Happy birthday. Sorry this got lost the first time from Adrian. Okay, so I know she's talked about meeting an author before, but I don't remember who that was, so now I'm really excited. Oh my gosh, it's Opposite Always by Chase Justin A. Reynolds. Oh my god. This was one of those books that I basically went on my wish list and found like a bunch of Black and people of color authors that I've been hearing about, that I was like, I've heard of these people, I want to read more of their stuff. I'm really excited to read this one, but I don't know much about it. I just saw that Black people were really recommending it, and so I added it to my wish list. And so let's read the synopsis. When Jack and Kate meet at a party, bonding until sunrise over their mutual love of Fruit Loops and their favorite flicks, Jack knows he's falling hard. Soon she's meeting his best friends, and Kate wins them over as easily as she did Jack. But this love story is complicated, because Kate dies, and their story should end there. Yet Kate's death sends Jack back to the moment they met, and Kate's there again. Beautiful, radiant Katie. Healthy, happy, and charming as ever. Jack isn't sure if he's losing his mind. Still, if he has a chance to prevent Kate's death, he'll take it, even if that means believing in time travel. But when a choice he makes turns deadly for someone else close to him, he has to figure out what he's willing to do and let go to save the people he loves. Oh my god. It also has it has a sneak peek of his other novel, his next novel that's coming out. So this is his first one. His second novel will be Early Departures, and so there's a sneak peek for that book in the back of this one. But the book itself is about 458 pages in the paperback. I have been thinking recently, though, too, while I'm sitting here talking to you guys, I have been thinking recently about what I plan to do with the coming months with trying to read more of authors of color, things of that nature, LGBTQ authors, trans authors, mental health, and other kinds of authors. So my plan is I'm going to keep this stack kind of how it is right now. So my plan is that I am still going to have like my drawing here for authors of color, and every month when I get through like so many books, or when I get through one particular book on my TBR, I'm going to pull one from this stack, from this bin here, so that I can really try to incorporate more of these authors out of this stack here, which include my people of color, mental health, LGBTQ, trans, non-binary authors, things of that nature. That way I kind of split up my month more so with that. And I think that my audiobooks for right now, until I cannot find any more on Overdrive that are by authors of color or anything regarding those topics, I think I might focus my attention on those ones, unless I also find something that I really, really wanted to listen to for a long time. That being said, I have not read any more of Children of Blood and Bone at this point. I didn't read any last night. I was in a very, very bad headspace yesterday, feeling very anxious and angry, and so I didn't really do any kind of reading. Still on page 152, about 29% of the way through, but because I don't really have anything to do today until Robert gets up, and I think maybe we go get groceries, maybe we wait till tomorrow, I'm not really sure. I am going to sit and read this pretty much the entire day. I don't really want to do anything else. I just want to sit and read after I film and leave it at that, because truthfully, I had such a bad day yesterday that I feel like I just want to, take this day to just do what I want to do. So yeah, that's basically it for right now. I'm gonna go film, and then we will kind of see where we go from there. My Native American, I guess, is showing a little bit more with this look. I don't know why. I know I had this whole tirade going on last night about how I felt like I wasn't super, I couldn't tell that I was Native American because I take so much after my own father with his fair skin. But for some reason, the way that I did my makeup today, I can definitely see more of it. I can see the high cheekbones here that I don't think I ever really noticed before. And I don't know, I feel like I see it a lot more for some reason today than I ever did before. It's interesting. I still am pale as fuck, but at least I can kind of see the resemblance that I have to my grandmother, because my grandmother also has the high cheeks and very similar kind of nose shape. And kind of even a similar face shape too. So I definitely see some of the resemblance to my grandmother. Or maybe it's these really pretty rock earrings that I got that were made by a Native woman. Maybe that's bringing me some Native aura in there. I don't know. I feel good. I also really like this look. I think it's fire, so. Okay, I am very sweaty and just got back from getting groceries and stuff, but I did pick up a few things because I wanted to spend a little money on myself. So first things first, I bought this for Robert and I's wedding, but it is the Instax Mini 11 camera. For our wedding, we actually, instead of doing like a guest book where people sign in at the reception, we wanted to do pictures instead, because there's a lot of people like on my side of the family he doesn't know, but may haven't heard the names basically. In mine, myself for his family. So we thought it would be really cool to do something a little different, where instead of like having the guest book where people sign in, we have everybody take pictures, and then on the backs of them, on the back of the pictures that come out, so like these things, we get people to write their names on it, so that like we could put names to faces kind of thing, especially when it comes to the gifts that we received during our reception. So I bought the camera itself. It doesn't come with any film, which kind of sucks, so I have to basically buy the film off of Amazon, or something, because at the store they didn't even have any of the film. Like, it was all gone. There was nothing there. So gonna have to buy it off of Amazon, and I'm gonna have to do that anyway because we're also gonna get disposable cameras to put around the entire reception hall, because we want people to take like candid photos of what exactly happens at the reception and everything. We are having a photographer there for most of the day, but she's not gonna be able to catch everything, and I would like some really candid fun shots of myself with like my friends and stuff. I did buy though a few books that were all pretty much on sale. Like, they're pretty cheap. They're like $7.50 a piece basically. So I've got quite a few Stephen King ones that I saw, because typically at this grocery store that I go to, they have a lot of Stephen King, like old like mass market paperbacks basically. So I got The Running Man, Cell, and Rose Matter, which Rose Matter I've heard mixed things on. My friend Jess from Jess Nevertheless just unhauled this book because she hated it, but I also follow a guy named Edward Lorne. He is a author, and he is a massive Stephen King fan. This was one of his like more 4-star books, so kind of polarizing thoughts, but we'll see kind of how I think of it. I also got a paperback copy of The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. I tried reading the audiobook for this here several months ago, and I just couldn't get into it. It was in a point where I kind of hit an audiobook slump, and I just never got back around to it, so I wanted to pick up a copy of this. And the other 2 books I got are both from Ellen Hilderbrand. Ellen Hilderbrand is an author that I have grown to really like. I like quite a few of her adult contemporaries. I wouldn't say they're like romances or anything. They definitely do not always focus on that, but they are more kind of like adult literary fiction, contemporary women's fiction kind of thing. I really like a lot of her stuff. There was like 1 or 2 misses for me, one of them being Barefoot, which I just really didn't like any of the characters in that one, but I ended up getting, I think, one of her newest titles, which is Summer of '69 and The Castaways. I, for one, think that also one of the things about Ellen Hilderbrand is she writes a lot of her stuff on either Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, which are very popular islands on the East Coast. She's one of the few authors that I know of that typically write within the same area very often. It's not very often that you find that she writes in other areas, unless like the person like goes to Nantucket from somewhere else. But pretty much Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard are like the 2 islands that she really loved growing up, and so she writes pretty much all of her women's fiction on those islands. So I really like a lot of her work. I think that it's actually really fun to read, and especially with this one basically being, I think, like a flashback going back to 1969. This is going to be interesting to see how the island might have been in that time period as opposed to like what it looks like now. So really excited to read both of these as well. So I got all of those. So I'm gonna go eat, and I'll probably sit and read quite a bit of Children of Blood and Bone over the course of the day. That's my plan. My plan for today is I would like to be able to get to probably about page 250, get about halfway through the book before I take a break maybe from it, and then probably by the end of the night I want to get to like page 300, so that way I have only maybe 200 and some pages of it, like 220 some, and I can get through that tomorrow while I, you know, do my editing and stuff like that. Like, either I will start reading tomorrow morning fairly early, and once I finish that, do editing, or what I'll do is do what I normally do and, you know, get something rendered, read for a bit, edit it while it's exporting, read for a bit kind of thing. So that's the plan, at least. Okay, so we are officially now 47% of the way through Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I am on page 252, and so far my thoughts on it. I think it's very good. I really like a lot of the world and the story that's being built up. However, I'm not feeling like super attached to any of the characters. I'm not necessarily sure why. I just feel like I'm not super connected to everybody. I feel like I am just more so kind of watching the story progress, and I feel like then I might have more opinions on the characters. But what I will say right now is I do like them, like, enough. I even like Inan in a lot of ways because I feel like he is really doing what he thinks is right, because he's definitely one of those characters where, having been the crown prince for so long and only being taught so many things by his father about how the Magi are bad, it's very, very clear to see that he is a product of his own environment. But he does truly care for his younger sister Amari, which is why he wants to go and try to save her and protect her, because there is a point that is a very graphic scene that they discuss about something that happened when they were children that Inan feels so guilty over, and he truly hates himself for that, because afterwards he noticed his sister had basically kind of moved away from him, and he thinks it's his fault, even though truly it was his father's fault. I feel like it's not a 5-star as of yet, but then again, I said that too for Crazy Rich Asians, and by the end of it, I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. So will this possibly be the same thing? It's absolutely possible, but I'm still only just about halfway through it, and I still have quite a bit left of it. So I do need to put this on the charger though, because I am at currently 11% on this. So I will have to put this on the charger probably tonight before I go to bed. So I'm using up the last HelloFresh meal we have for this week. We get about 4 every week, which is really nice. It's super, super affordable, and typically, like, the way that we go through food here, but with between me and Robert, like, the amount of money we spend on food to like make for the week is about as much as we would spend with HelloFresh. So it was a really good kind of trade-off, because for one, we're eating a little bit healthier in some capacities, and two, it is something that we can make ourselves and feel a little bit more proud of to make, because a lot of times it's either, you know, I just put a frozen stir fry on the stove, or I throw a pizza in the oven and we kind of call it good. But this is the one we're making tonight. It is called a Middle Eastern steak and rice pilaf dish. I also really like this because I feel like I eat a lot of the same thing a lot of the time, and one of the things I like about HelloFresh is they kind of pull their stuff every week from different parts of the world, and you even get to choose. Like, they do give you, like, every week 4 or even 5 depending on what plan you get, but we get 4 meals a week. They give you, like, a list of the ones that, like, they're planning on giving out for the week, but you can interchange them with any of the other recipes that are out for that week. Some of them are a little bit more expensive because they're more gourmet. You can also add in, like, lunch meals if you choose to that are also extra, but we just do the 4 meals a week for 2 people. So this is, like I said, Middle Eastern steak and rice pilaf with tzatziki sauce, almonds, and smoky roasted vegetables, which I really love that. I am always someone that has to have veggies with my food. I don't know why. Whenever I make food at home, like, especially when I was just making, like, the same thing pretty much every day, I would cook chicken on the stove and put, like, peppers and onions and any other veggies I would have. Like, it would just be chicken and veggies with sometimes rice, sometimes not. Because that was just easy. It was easy, it was filling, and, you know, but these kind of things make it so that it's a little bit more fun and we get to try new things. That reminds me, so today I actually took a huge plunge, and with my mystery novel, I did send it off to the beta reader that I was looking to pay to read my work, and that is Katie Weismer from Kate's Book Date. If you guys don't know her, she is a booktuber, and she also does a lot of lifestyle vlogs where she does, like, reading vlogs and work week in her life vlogs with her editing and all her little side jobs that she has. I really like her. I really trust her opinion, and so I was very excited to send my work off to her. And I'm really excited because she's gonna start it up in August when she gets through the month, because she basically plans out months and ahead of time, and she had 1 spot left available for a manuscript evaluation in August. So I am on that list now, and we'll be starting the project up on August 10th, and she should be wrapping it up in September, which I'm super excited about, because that means that before I get married, I should be able to get through another round of edits, and then, I don't know, maybe we'll see, hopefully send it off to some agents to review it. So yeah, I mean, I may go through a few drafts, honestly, before I even do that, after I get feedback from Katie. I'm not really sure. It's gonna really depend on how I feel, but I know she's gonna give me some really great notes and really critique what I have, because she is just amazing. I really like what she does, and I truly trust her opinion, so that's exciting. Now, am I a chef or am I a chef? My God, this looks beautiful. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:30. I have only really been up for the last hour and a half. I did not wake up today until 11 o'clock because I did not fall asleep until about 12:30 last night. So I also did not do any reading before I went to bed like I had planned on to get me to the 300-page mark of Children of Blood and Bone. So now I'm going to sit here all day and edit and try to read at some point. Okay, so it is about 2:47 in the afternoon, and I'm going to end this vlog here. I have just so much footage to edit right now, just including the videos I loaded into my laptop today. The vlog is already over 3 hours of raw footage, so that's going to be it for me today. I did do a little bit more reading of Children of Blood and Bone today. I am right now on page 269, so read about 17 pages so far today, and I do plan on finishing it sometime today once I finish all my videos. I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day reading, and I'm not cooking anything special tonight. We gone through all of our HelloFresh stuff, so I'm just going to make a pizza tonight for dinner. So it's kind of how it is. But yeah, I want to get this footage edited because I know there's quite a few time lapses within it, but there's just so much to edit. So if you guys did enjoy this vlog though, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know what you think. Again, I haven't done much writing over the last few days. This book is that I'm working on. It's just going to be how it's going to be. Truthfully, I'm kind of stuck at the moment. I need to go back through some notes and figure out if there's another scene I feel like I'm comfortable writing. Otherwise, I think it'll be time here for me to do some research on it. Like, that's, I think, my big thing is going and doing the research before I feel comfortable with actually writing the book. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I did get a few good scenes with it, at least so far this month. But I will try to, at least in the next week, maybe write one more scene, see kind of where it goes. If there's anything else I feel like I want to write, we'll kind of go with that as we do. So yeah, this is a very chaotic piece, but very chaotic life too. I feel like I never know what's going to happen every day until I get halfway through my day. If you guys haven't already and you'd like to be, hit the button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys.